All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today. I am Audrey Malagon. I'm a mathematician, and I serve as mathematical advisor to Verified Voting. If you're not familiar with our organization, we are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization whose mission is really to strengthen democracy for all voters. And a lot of our work lies at the intersection of technology and elections. So that's what I'm going to talk about today is technology, and especially blockchain technology, its implications and issues in voting. So I want to highlight a couple of key characteristics of blockchain voting and the issues that the implications that these have for elections. So as you're aware, blockchain technology removes a central authority and allows a large enough group of users to make decisions, decide what the official record is, even discarding records if those are not in agreement, if those are found to not be what the correct consensus determines. And blockchain technology is really good at keeping information on a blockchain secure. You can tell when something has been tampered with. It keeps that information secure. So what issues do these characteristics present for elections? Well, it removes the central authority and allows a large enough group of users to make decisions and even discard records. We can see ways in which that can be problematic for elections, not having some central authority and guidance there. And even though it's really good at keeping information on the blockchain secure, it keeps any information, even bad information, that reaches the blockchain secure. So we're really concerned about making sure that information that gets to the blockchain is correct. A lot of our concerns lie on the transmission of that information before it actually gets to the blockchain. And unfortunately, really secure blockchain on the end doesn't address some of the true issues with internet or mobile voting. And so you've heard, and you'll hear a lot today, about concerns with paper ballots and traditional voting methods and ways that we need to mitigate those. But what you need to be aware of is that there are parallel concerns and vulnerabilities when we use electronic methods. And we need to really keep those in mind because often those are more difficult to mitigate and they can have more widespread implications. So what vulnerabilities does using technology in elections introduce? Well, if we're transmitting actual votes electronically, transmitting votes over the internet, and here, as opposed to what Gerard said about voting in a broad sense, I'm really talking about transmitting voted ballots. Those votes could be subject to alterations before they even enter the blockchain. If we're using internet or mobile voting, we're relying on individual devices, which can be vulnerable to malware. Election servers can be vulnerable to attacks. For hosting elections on the internet, those can be subject to denial of service attacks. And anytime we're transmitting voters' identity and their votes together, we need to be aware of the potential for widespread privacy violations. So these are vulnerabilities that we need to keep in mind when we think about voting electronically. And in particular, I want to talk about the challenges that electronic voting poses for audits. So we saw in this past election the importance of post-election audits. We've seen risk-limiting audit pilots and risk-limiting audits really take hold across the nation in many states. We saw in this atmosphere of disinformation and distrust how important some of these post-election verifications were to give confidence in the reported outcome. And so if we vote in a way that doesn't produce a voter-verified paper ballot, that's a real challenge for auditing. And I really want to highlight that simply printing a ballot on the receiving end isn't enough, because when we conduct these statistical audits, we are using an underlying assumption that the paper we're auditing has been verified by the voter. That the voter, if the voter never interacts with that piece of paper that you've printed on the receiving end, then we can't be sure that that piece of paper is reflecting the same intent that the voter marked on their whatever device they use to vote. So the voter has to have an opportunity to verify that paper record. Otherwise, we can perform the mathematical process, we can calculate a risk limit, we can do all that, but it's analogous to doing that with a box of ballots that we found in a hallway with the lid off. Yes, there's ballots in there, they were cast by voters, but do we know that they really truly reflect the correct voter intent? So we have to have proper chain of custody on paper ballots in order to perform audits, and transmitting those electronically produces an issue there. We can end up excluding voters that used this new technology from any authentic post-election audit. And this can really open up avenues for distrust in the entire election outcome, even if it's a small group of voters or a small pilot that we're voting this way, especially when margins are close. We have to be aware of the potential for distrust that can sow if we can't perform an authentic audit on a voter verified paper ballot. So why is this so hard? Why is technology in elections so difficult? Well, we really need to keep in mind that it is not the same as e-commerce or digital record keeping when we're talking about actually transmitting votes or voted ballots electronically. Technology has advanced in a lot of arenas, but transmitting votes really presents unique challenges. And the reason for this is because we're trying to do two things simultaneously that are really difficult to do at the same time. We have constitution.
Audrey, I gotta give you just a 3-minute warning.
We're good. Well, we'll wrap it up here. No problem. Just a couple slides left. We have a constitutional right to a secret ballot. We need to keep the voter's identity secret and separate from their vote, but we also need to provide a voter verified record of voter intent. And so paper ballots present one way to do this. I can mark my ballot in whatever way I mark it, but I can verify that my vote on this piece of paper lives on in the sea of ballots that cannot be traced back to me. So we have to keep in mind that these two things have to be done simultaneously, however we're voting. These are the issues we have to address at the same time, and they're difficult. These are difficult to address at the same time. That's why this becomes such a challenging problem. And unfortunately, so far, we haven't seen successful methods that are able to do both of those same things. You'll hear a lot today about improving turnout and improving access to the vote, which is really an important issue to address. But you should be aware that so far, the studies show actual little to no improvement in turnout with electronic voting methods, sometimes even decreased turnout. And all of the available systems have shown serious security vulnerabilities. Verified Voting's Internet Voting Resources page has papers on this that you can access and read. There's some security analysis of the systems that are currently available. And then we just also want to keep in mind as we are trying to solve these issues, because there are issues with access. We do want everyone to have access. We want them to be able to vote. We just want to make sure their votes are actually counted as they were cast. So keep in mind, there are some safer options. You'll probably hear a lot about overseas military voters today. That's a group that has unique challenges. One option for them is a prepaid mail label that on average is coming back within 3 to 5 days. That's within a 45-day window to vote. The MOVE Act requires blank ballot delivery electronically that doesn't present the same security issues as sending a voted ballot back. So that's another option. And there are secure.
I got to give you a 1 minute voting, 1 minute warning.
No problem. Oops, I went the wrong way. I do want to point out that there are also secure, remote accessible vote by mail options that produce a paper ballot that voters can verify. They can use assistive technology. We can use technology in a responsible way and produce something that we can audit later. So just end with this slide here. We want to keep all three of these things in mind, and we don't want to sacrifice security while we're trying to solve other issues. Thanks so much.